Hi, and welcome to this third video in the PowerShell MongoDB series. In the last video, we saw how we can create a Mongo database and a Mongo collection through our PowerShell terminal or our PowerShell session in Visual Studio Code. We're going to be using Visual Studio Code in this series just to kind of build up our code and save it. And then the first video is where we brought up our MongoDB and just played around with the MDBC module. In this video, we're actually going to be creating our collection again, creating our database, but this is where we're going to be actually inserting a bunch of employee data. So we're going to be using employees as our project here to learn Mongo. I think that's a really good starting point, especially if you work in IT or really for any project for your portfolio, because what we're basically going to be doing is we're going to be storing our employee data that we're getting from HR in our CSV file. We're going to be inputting that into our MongoDB. We're going to be updating our MongoDB if someone changes last name, someone changes title. We're going to be able to update that. And then we could use that MongoDB to then populate our Active Directory and then use our Active Directory to then update the MongoDB with the new information, like the SAM account name, the email address that gets created. We can even put groups that they belong to. And then this way, you don't need to give someone access to Active Directory to see the user data. You can give people access to the Mongo database. It's really secure. They can't change passwords, although that would take additional rights on Active Directory. You don't have to give them access to the actual Active Directory tool, which could definitely expose maybe more than you would want to. Maybe you don't want to expose group membership. Maybe you don't want to expose certain values that would be easily visible in Active Directory. This would be a great intermediary tool to use. So let's go ahead. Let's actually get started here. So one of the first things that I just want to go over is just go over our MongoDB again. We're going to just refresh this. You're going to see that there is only one database and 6 collections, which is our sample database and sample collections. We're going to be creating a new one today. And also, for anyone that wants to follow along with this video, I used Mockaroo. Now, this video is not sponsored by any means. This was just something that I quickly found online. I really like this one. I've used other ones in the past, but I thought this one was kind of nice. It's called Mockaroo, and the link will be in the description down below. It lets you really build out a random CSV. Now, I didn't create one of 1,000. We're going to be working with 10 records to start. It's a lot easier to troubleshoot 10 records versus 1,000. And then what I did is I created an employee ID field, which was a digit sequence, and I put 8 number signs here. And then I have first name, last name, these were just defaulted in here. And then I created a title and I put it as a type job title. And then you could just hit generate data and that will generate a CSV for you. So let's go ahead and let's just take a quick look at the CSV file that I have here. And we're actually going to just change some of this. And we are going to be modifying. So we're going to be starting off with 10 records, like I said, and we're going to be adding records and manipulating records throughout this video to see how it actually works. So without further ado, let's go ahead and let's actually get started with coding here. So the first 2 lines, once again, is always just to connect to our MongoDB. This was done in the first video and also the second video. So please, if you haven't watched those videos, you're definitely going to want to watch those because that's going to help you stay up to pace with this video. So let's go ahead and let's first add our first line here, which is going to be creating our collection and creating our database. Now, what's really nice about this is if the database already exists or if the collection already exists, this runs, but it doesn't do anything, which is fantastic. So this is really going to be a line that's going to be existing purely to make sure that, let's say we're moving to a new MongoDB or you're giving this script to a friend or colleague, they will easily be able to spin up this exact scenario. So that's where this is really good. So we're going to put a name here. We're going to put the name of our collection as employees. And then for our database here, as we remember from the last time, we're going to do a $, open and close parentheses, and we're going to do a get MDBC database. And we're going to put name here, and we're going to name our database just Jacked for JackedProgrammer, because this is the video series that we're doing. And we are going to run this. And if we go ahead and we actually just refresh our Mongo here, we are going to see that we have 2 databases now, and we have 7 collections. And we can see that we have total documents is 0. So there is no data in here. And that's exactly what we would expect because we haven't put in anything just yet. So now we have our first line. It's always going to make sure that our database and our collection is existing. Let's go ahead and let's fetch that file that we got from human resources with our employee data. So I have that here just in my same folder as my scripts here named employees.csv. So all I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a variable called employee file path, and we're going to go ahead and we are going to put a set of double quotes here, and we're going to right click on that, copy path, and paste that in here. Perfect. And then what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to create another variable called employee file data, and we're going to make that equal to import-csv. We're going to specify the path. We're going to specify our employee file path. We're also going to set up the delimiter. Even though it is the default delimiter, I like to put that in there. This way, everyone knows that when they go and read the code, the delimiter that it's expecting is comma. Because if you do go to different languages, the default delimiter is different. So it's always handy to specify it. And then I always usually specify a default encoding. So once we have that here, let me just minimize that. And let's just go ahead and let's just make sure that we're getting our data back. So if we go ahead and we look, now what I like to do, especially in these videos, because of the way that it's formatted, we're going to do an out grid view. It's just a lot easier to visualize the data, especially on YouTube video here. So I know that it is kind of small. We're just going to zoom in. And here is our data. So we have our nice and 10 users here, or what are going to be users. They're just employees right now. So we have a good starting area there. So we can go ahead and we can remove that line. Now what we're going to want to do now is we have the employee file data, but as you've probably noticed, all we have is employee ID, first name, last name, and title. MongoDB requires a underscore ID, and we want to use something that's going to be unique. And what's good is in this scenario, we're going to take for granted that the employee ID never changes and never gets reused. So that is going to be an assumption that we are making in this video. So what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to do employee file data is equal to employee file data. Type that to select, and then we're going to do a dynamic field here. So we are going to do the @ symbol, open and close curly brackets. We're going to put name is going to be equal to a pair of double quotes underscore ID, and then we're going to have our expression here, and we're just going to have our expression be our employee ID. So it's going to be $ underscore employee ID. And then after that, we are going to do a comma star. So that's going to select everything that already exists, but we're adding a underscore ID. So if we actually go ahead and run this line here, and now we go and look at this data once again, I'm just going to use the short form of out grid view. Now we're going to notice that we have our ID field. Now you're going to notice out grid view gets rid of the underscores. You can tell that because employee ID is no longer has an underscore. Just be aware that there is underscores here, so no need to worry. But we can see our ID and employee ID is exactly the same. So that's exactly what we want. This way it's nice and easy for us. Now, once we actually have that, what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to have a variable to contain our collection, contain our database. As we saw in our first video, it comes very handy when we want to fetch records and add records. So let's go ahead and let's do a variable called db, and we're going to do a get MDBC database. And as we know, this is case sensitive. So we're going to do jacked here. Now, in reality, what we should actually be doing right off the bat here is doing a database name is equal to jacked, and then we can have a collection name equals employees, and then right away let's just start modifying these values, and then this way if we ever wanted to change them, we can easily change them at the top, but it also reduces the chances that you're going to make a typo somewhere in your code. So that is just a very, very good programming practice. And then we're going to do a collection here. We're going to do a get MDBC collection. Name is going to be, of course, our collection name. And then the database here, we're going to reference our database variable. So if we go ahead and we actually just make sure we run this here, and then we can run these, and we're going to see that we can get our collection, and our collection comes back. So that's fantastic. So now what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to import all that data. Now, we can do it a specific way right off the bat, and it's going to work. Now, what's going to happen is we're going to have a problem in the future when we go to add employees, but that's okay. We're going to make it. We're going to make it with the mistake because that's how I did it the first time. I think that making mistakes is a great way to actually learn. So what we're going to do here is we're going to do employee, our $, employee file data, because that's our data that we want to actually put in. And we're going to want to pipe that to add MDBC data. And our collection, we are going to reference our collection variable, of course. And let's go ahead and let's run this. So now if we go back to our MongoDB, as you can see, we have total documents is 0. If we go ahead and we refresh this now, total documents is 10. So that's perfect. We already know that we have our data in there. So now let's go ahead and let's get our data. So let's do a variable called employees, and we're going to do get MDBC. And then we're going to specify our collection once again. And let's see what this looks like. Now, we've already seen this in the first video, and I kind of hinted towards that there's a way to actually fix this. Now, it comes back as a giant hash table. Now, the hash table is actually broken up, but you don't have something that's very easy to work with, especially in PowerShell. Now, you can definitely work with this, but it's going to take a little bit more work. But what you can actually do with the MDBC module is add a as parameter and then add the 2 letters of PS. And then we're going to run this line. And now we're going to look at what is inside the employees variable again. And look at that. We are actually getting PowerShell objects back now, which is fantastic. So that is what makes it super, super easy. Now that we have this, now let's go ahead and let's try to just see if we run this employee file data and add MDBC data again on that collection, what happens? So we get a bunch of errors of duplicate keys. Now, we might not necessarily want this to happen all the time because we're going to be getting this employee file maybe nightly, maybe a couple times a week. And we can easily get a new employee. So if we get a new employee here, just change that, and we're just going to change that to a John Doe here, and we're going to hit save. I can run this, but we'll get 10 errors of a duplicate key. So what I actually like to do is split off to only get the new employees. So in order to get the new employees, what we need to do is we need to first fetch our employees before we even start inserting information. So this is going to be our employees that are currently in the database. And it's completely okay if your database is empty. This will still actually work. And then what we want to do is we want to grab new employees, and that's going to equal your employee file data. So all of our employees in that file data, and we're going to pipe that where underscore ID, and then we're going to do a not in, and then we're going to reference our employees variable dot underscore ID. And if we actually go ahead and let me just comment out these two lines here, because we're not going to need these right now. All we want to do is run this just to see what our new employees would look like here. So let's run the entire thing. And our new employees right now is just John Doe. So it actually managed to filter out all of our other employees out because it knows that it's already in the MongoDB. So that's actually perfect. And then what we can do is we can just uncomment this line where we inserted all of our employee file data. All we need to do now is change that to new employees. And now only the new employees are going to be added into the collection. So if we actually go ahead, we run this line, and then we can go ahead and we can get the employees now, and we should see our last item. We can tell that it is our John Doe in there. So that is perfect. Now, the other thing that we still need to be able to do, of course, is update our employees. Now, what I like to do is I like to update all the employees no matter what. You can add a bunch of checks for this as well and only update the ones that really need to be. But in our first iteration of this, let's just update all of them. It's really not that hard to write, and it's not going to take that much time. We can go ahead and we can do a for each loop. We're going to do for each $employee in, and in this one, we're going to take our employee file data. We don't necessarily want only the existing employees. We've already inserted our new employees. We might as well just go through them all and just update them. Now, again, you might not want to do this. You might only want to pick the employees that were already existing. Saves you a couple entries. Maybe if you do get a lot of new employees every single time, maybe this is handy. So that could just be something to do. And of course, there are a lot of other scenarios that you could easily want to do this for as well. Maybe you want to select the employees that are in your database but not in your file. You want to update them differently, saying that they aren't active anymore or anything like that. These are all things that you can do. If you guys would like me to do that in another video, definitely let me know in the comments down below, and I can add as many features to this as we possibly can so you guys get the most benefit from these videos. But let's go back to this for each loop here. So we have our for each employee in employee file data. Now we're going to use our update MDBC data commandlet here. Now what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to do a filter. So we're going to filter, and here we all need objects here to work with this. So we're going to want to filter on our ID, which is going to equal our employee dot underscore ID as well. And then what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to update. And this is where you are going to tell it what you want it to update. And what's really important is we need to first start again with an object here. And we're going to use, we need to use the single quotes in this option. Now, this is very important. It needs to be single quotes because we cannot read the $sign set as a $sign. It can't be seen as a variable here. So we have the $sign set here, and we're going to do equals, and we are going to do another object. And then we're going to import or set all of our properties that we want it to update. Now, because our employee file doesn't have that many columns or anything like that, it becomes pretty easy. But this can definitely be quite long if you have a lot of information. So we're going to do first name equals employee dot first name. Then we're going to do semicolon, last name equals employee dot last name. And then one last one is we're going to have title equals $ employee dot title. And we have our two closing curly brackets, and we're going to specify our collection to be collection. And let's go ahead and let's run this line here. And let's go ahead and let's just fetch our employees. And let's go and do it employees. And we're going to pipe that to an out grid view so we can see the changes. All right, so let's just go ahead and let's see what we have right now. So we haven't really made any actual modifications. So we have our information here. We have our John Doe. So let's go ahead and let's change our John Doe to JackedProgrammer as the first name, last name. And we're going to change office assistant to programmer, and we're going to change Osby to a programmer as well. So let's go ahead and let's go in our file here. We're going to change John Doe to JackedProgrammer. We're going to change him to a programmer. We're going to change Osby to a programmer as well. And let's go ahead and let's just add another person here. We're going to change the employee ID. We're going to name this person Penny. And we're going to put the last name as Doe. And we are going to put them as a QA analyst. All right, so let's go ahead and let's save that. We can close out of our file. Now let's go ahead. Let's just select the entire code and let's hit run. And we just got our output back here. So here we can actually see that Osby got changed to a programmer. John Doe is now JackedProgrammer and a programmer. And we have our new employee, Penny Doe, as a QA analyst. So this is actually already working very, very well. Now what we could actually do is we refresh our MongoDB overview here. We're going to see that we have 12 items. What we can actually even do is remove MDBC database. Let's reference our database name here. Let's just remove that line now. And if we go ahead and we refresh our page here, we should see that we're down to 1 database and 6 collections. Let's go ahead and let's just run this code now. So we're going to be building our collection, building everything from scratch. And we can see we still got all of our data in there perfectly fine. And if we go back to our MongoDB, we are going to see that we have 2 databases, 7 collections. If we go into our employees, we can see that we have our 12 elements, our 10 from our Mockaroo, and then we've added 2 more since then. So this script is working fantastically from start to finish. Even if there's no employees, if the database doesn't even exist, as long as we have that file and we have our Mongo that's existing, not the database, just our Mongo environment existing, you can completely generate an employee database in your Mongo. Take that information from your HR file and pump it up there, and this will just work. So in the next video, what we're going to do is we're going to take this information, as we saw, we can get it back from PowerShell objects. We're going to be creating our Active Directory information and then pumping that back up to Mongo, so Mongo will have more information. If you guys would like to see anything else on this video series, please let me know in the comment section down below. Also, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. Also, be sure to hit that notification bell to be notified when the next video comes up. And I will see you guys on the next video.